Thank you, Chandra. And thank you, Aisha, Ravi, for making this great conference happen and for giving us some time to talk to you here. There is no blueprint yet to run a shrimp hatchery. We still have to be resilient. That's why the title. Resilience means the capacity to withstand difficulties. It means adapting to challenge. In short, it's a bit a story of a hatchery manager. Now, what I would like to do, well, going through these 5 pillars in hatchery management, we have to keep this adaptive predisposition in order to get to this consistent production of high quality PL. And what I would like to do here is, going through these 5 pillars, highlight some of the pitfalls that we encounter when visiting hatcheries, when working in hatcheries, and pitfalls that are in many cases related to SOPs, standard operating procedures that are either not there or are not implemented in the right way. Now, starting with genetics, we can be very short here. It has been dealt with extensively yesterday. I just would like to draw your attention to a statement that Robbins here made about, 7 years ago, and it is still very true today. So thank you, Robbins. Without healthy post-larvae, genetics don't mean very much. It has been said in some different wording yesterday several times. It basically means that we can stock animals from a genetic superstrain, but we still need to provide the right environment for these animals to be able to express their full genetic potential. Starting with environment, and for us hatchery people, environment in the first place means biosecurity. Now this slide summarizes a bit the checkpoints that we need to go through from nucleus breeding center to PL production. And for us, from what we see in hatcheries or from biosecurity audits in hatcheries, we see the 2 main problems are usually related to inadequate treatment or removal of bacterial biofilms and inadequate treatment, preparation, production of live feeds, algae, as well as Artemia. First things first, we have to start from a clean system. And what you see here is, it's one routine that works, it's one routine that we use. There are many other routines that are effective. But I believe the 2 main points in this are that you have to do this consistently. You don't compromise on, keeping your system clean. Don't skip days. That's number 1. Number 2 is use an effective biocide. You need a biocide to really remove the biofilm. And just 2 words on the biocide. The biofilm contains components that can slow down or block completely the entrance of simple disinfectants like chlorine. So you need a product that has these four components: surfactant, organic acids, an oxidizing agent, and an emulsifier. And it's basically the surfactant that penetrates into the biofilm and makes, provides the entrance basically for the other active components. Then probiotics. Peter also talked about this, and I believe several other people will talk about this. It's been around for a long time in hatcheries, first in grow-out, later in, it has been around for a long time in shrimp culture, first in grow-out, later on in hatcheries. But what we still see is that in many cases, probiotics are used in an inefficient way. People focus too much on what does the probiotic do. Can it remove the waste? Can it help in digestion? Can it kill Vibrio? And yes, it can do all these things if you use it the right way. And what I believe has been overlooked too many times is the principle of competitive exclusion. In order to understand this fully, we need to go back a bit to a theory in microbioecology that was put together by these two gentlemen on the right upper corner there about 50 years ago. It is the theory about the K and the R strategists. So they divide bacteria in two groups. K strategists that are, if we relate this to shrimp, that are harmless to shrimp and can even be beneficial to shrimp, but they are slow growers. Our strategists are bacteria that can be dangerous for shrimp, and they are fast growers. A good example of a K strategist is a Bacillus bacteria or a nitrifier. A good example of an R strategist is a Vibrio. Now, if you look at the growth rate of Bacillus and Vibrio, you see that the Vibrio is reproducing every 20 minutes, a Bacillus every 3 hours. So big difference. Now, how can we prevent Vibrio from colonizing our larvae tank using probiotics? But in the first place, by making sure the probiotics are there first, and by putting them in there in large enough numbers so they can block the entry of any pathogen, bacteria, or other microorganism. It's important to have them in there first, and it's important to have them in there before we stock the tank with larvae. As you know, in Nauplius 4, the anal pore is already open, so that's where the animal becomes sensitive to entries from particles from the outside. So make sure that these first entries are good probiotics, are good bacteria, so that the gut, the intestine, can be colonized with the probiotics. What works for us is a day before stocking, we add 100,000 CFU per ml, and then we follow that up with a daily topping of about 50,000 CFU per ml. Now, some very interesting and exciting work has been done on the shrimp microbiome over the last years. Work mainly done in grow-out, but more recently also in hatchery. And a very important finding that the researchers saw when they looked at the bacteria in a shrimp hatchery tank, an important finding for us is the fact that they showed that between 1/3 and 1/2 of the bacteria in the rearing water in the shrimp tank were introduced by external entries. Number one, if you look at the ratio, the number one in these were bacteria coming from live algae. Second place, Artemia, and then we have water change and dry diets. Now, these findings are, I believe, very important for us, hatchery people, because they show us the crucial role these peripheral microbes play in PL culture. But they also put us on a road to further developments in taking good care of live food production and new developments in shrimp hatchery production as such. Think of RAS, think of bioflux for the future. Looking at live algae, they are by far the #1 contributor to this microbiome in a shrimp tank. Because in most cases, live algae are the first feed the larvae get. Some of the researchers of the microbiome believe that it's really the bacteria associated with live algae that direct the further development of the microbiome in the shrimp tank. So special care for algae cultures. Obviously, #1 is to start from pure cultures, from clean cultures. #2, try to culture the algae as much as possible indoor, where you can better control the environment. And if you have the capacity, you might consider photobioreactors. Photobioreactors are expensive to install, but they have a high biosecurity, a high reliability, and at the end of the day, they could save you money. You just need the economy of scale to be able to consider this. Third point, and very important, it's something that we still see happening in many hatcheries, that you use the algae for too long time. It's important to feed them when they are in the exponential phase. Once they get into the stationary phase, they start producing self-inhibiting metabolites, and bacteria come in. Also, last but not least, know that probiotics do work. During the last phase of the algae, the day before you feed them to the shrimp, to have some kind of assurance, it's always good to add some probiotics into the tank, just to prevent fibrils or other pathogens to enter. Artemia. This slide provides basically the growth, the PL biomass per tank in different tanks feeding different ratios of Artemia, going from 0 kilograms per million PL to a bit over 3 kilograms per million PL. Now what we clearly see is a direct link between the biomass and the level of Artemia fed. We also see a significant loss in larval biomass when Artemia use is significantly reduced. So it is crucial, I think we all know that we feed them a basic amount of Artemia at least. You see that over 3 kilograms, it starts to level down. The second thing is Artemia is representing a certain cost in your hatchery. And mainly depending on how much you feed, this cost can be significant. What you see here are numbers from one hatchery that uses a few kilograms, up to 2 kilograms of Artemia, and another one using over 4 kilograms of Artemia. Now, if you want to reduce cost on Artemia, don't follow your first reaction and feed less Artemia. As you see from the previous slides, it's not a very good idea. So the thing to do is focus on getting the most out of your Artemia cysts. And you can do this just by following the actual hatching instructions for hatching, harvest, and storage. And what we see, you might be surprised, but in over 85% of the hatcheries that we get into, we see that people don't really follow these instructions. And the major breaches are, first of all, keeping the cysts in a temperature that is not really beneficial for them. So try to keep them below 5 degrees at all times. Other breaches are too high or too low temperatures during hatching. What we see a lot is that the optimal pH level is not respected, either too high, too low. Vibrio suppression is not always applied, and also in many cases there's just not sufficient light to have a good optimal hatch. I can give you some examples from hatcheries that we've worked with. By just keeping the pH in the optimal level, it makes a difference of up to 12% in hatching output. By making sure there is enough light, we had an increase in hatching in several instances of over 20–25%. So make your own calculation in how much money you can save by just doing these simple things on a year basis on Artemia. Thirdly, from what we saw in the microbiome slide, Artemia also represents a major portion in your external bacteria blooms. But this is the case if you are not following biosecure production process. In order to get to a biosecure Artemia, you make sure you adhere to these 4 things. 1, apply a Vibrio suppressor during hatching. Very important. You need to know that when the cyst breaks, when the cyst shell breaks at the beginning of hatching, a lot of glycerol is being released in the water, and glycerol is a perfect substrate for bacteria, including Vibrios. Make sure of a 100% separation and removal of cyst shells and unhatched cysts. These are good substrates for bacteria to grow on. Also, in case you decapsulate cysts, make sure that you remove the membranes that are left in the hatching water. Also, make sure that the nuclei that you harvest are undamaged and alive. And for this, we have a good product and system in place with Separt, the Separt product and the Separt tools. And I'm just going to try to what you see here is on the left side a harvest from Artemia done with the standard system with a double nylon sieve. On the right side you have the harvest of the nuclei done with the Separt and the Separt tool, in this case the HandyMag. And you really see a clear difference between the survivability of the nuclei in both cases. And it is important to get live nuclei. There's a process called autolysis that's set in when animals, including nuclei, start dying, and it also can attract the bacteria. Then last, cold store the nuclei after harvest, and if you want to keep them for several hours before feeding them to the shrimp. This will prevent them from getting into the further instar stages, and this will save you up to 25% of nutrient energy by just keeping them at cold temperature. Artemia enrichment. Nothing new for marine fish hatcheries, but not so common in shrimp hatcheries today. This for several reasons. Now we have been revisiting this And today we have a procedure in place that is user-friendly, that is biosecure, and that we can enrich in one step, meaning we can do the hatching process and the enrichment process at the same time. You simply harvest an nuclei after 30 hours. This is ready now, this is done. What we are doing now is screening different enrichment products and different levels of enrichment of these products for shrimp, and look at the benefit for the shrimp. So this one we will keep you posted, coming soon. Then last but not least, for the Artemia, a new development, something new. This is an AI-powered live food counting tool called SnapHeart. I think we all are familiar with the cumbersome, maybe for some boring work of counting Artemia. We are also familiar with the errors that go with this. It's routine, you can do errors from sampling, from counting, from recording data. Now, this tool will end all that. The SnapHeart is a precise, accurate, and reliable tool. Optimizes your time and costs, and has a user-friendly interface. So we have the tool, and we also have the platform. So you can access these data from your desktop or from any mobile device that you have. Now, the SnapHeart was launched officially last week at the European Aquaculture Society conference. I believe that we can say that we launch it now officially in Asia through this Hatch India event. Thank you. Then last but not least, transfer to on-growing. Timing is crucial. This graph represents the results from an EMS challenge test done on different age groups of PL. And you see that the dose of bacteria needed to kill a PL33 is about 100 times higher than the dose needed to kill a PL16. This is from research done not so long ago by INVE. And yeah, it's really an advertisement, we can say, for implementing a nursery phase. And basically, if we look at salmon, about 30 years ago in the 1990s, they stocked fish of 20 grams in the cages. Today they stock fish of 200 grams in the cages. And this for the same reason. The older animals are simply more robust and are giving you a better chance for a successful culture. Now lastly, and this is also something that Peter just touched on, at the end of the day we all have to make money. And for a hatchery manager, this means selecting the most profitable protocol, but that, and very important, preserves the PL quality. Now these numbers are from a hatchery in Thailand that we have been following for some time, and they were looking at their best balance between profitability and PL quality. And this is what they came up with. And it's striking to see that their best balance, their earnings before income and taxes, is about 25% higher than their income from their former standard protocol. And this is, when we look at the red frame, they had a higher product cost in their best balance protocol. And again, it's something that Peter just touched on. Even when your feed, your health products, whatever, is costing you more to purchase, it will benefit you at the end. Because as you see, all their other costs are higher in the standard protocol than in the best balance, simply because at the end you have a better production using high quality inputs. So the lesson to learn here is we don't compromise the performance by cutting costs on essential healthcare and nutritional products. Okay, finally, I don't know if we have the time, but we were also asked to give a bit of information on what are they doing in Ecuador in the hatcheries. And it's too long to go through all these things, but for me, the two major, I would say, differences between what we see in Asia is in Ecuador, we see a zero tolerance in biosecurity, basically. Any compromise, if anything skips a biosecurity, or if anyone skips a biosecurity step, they have to face severe consequences. Another big difference is they use really probiotics in every step in the hatchery, going from treating water, algae, and even now many hatcheries start to use it in Artemia, when they store Artemia, for example. Adding probiotics really helps. And thirdly, okay, what we see in Ecuador is no use of live polychaetes, or very little, which is also completely different from what we are used to in Asia. Maybe food for thought and for discussion later on. Thank you very much for your attention.